You've done the deal, the contract's signed, but work can't start. The reason? One of the parties still needs to get a permit. Timelines slip, costs rise, and fingers point. Whether you're building houses, launching software, or shipping goods, authorisations can be critical to your success. I'm Mike, founder of Starlit Contracts, where we help you to negotiate and use contracts with confidence. We're looking at permits, approvals, and consents. Let's look at this topic in summary now. Permits, approvals, and consents are different types of authorization that enable one or both parties to perform their obligations. How do they work? There's often a formal application process to request an authorization, and the decision is recorded in a formal way. Authorizations may be needed from a regulator, a governmental authority, from a company, or from a private person. Is this something you should care about? Well, it really depends on your deal. Is it necessary for you or the other party to get an authorization for the contract to be performed in full and in compliance with applicable laws, rules, and regulations? If so, it's prudent to know what the authorizations are and who's responsible to get them. Let's look at a practical example together. Quality Builder signed a contract with landowner customer to build houses. Customer's land has trees. A permit is needed from the environmental authority before work starts. Customer asks the builder to order materials before getting authorization. The authority rejects the application. What could go right for the builder in this situation? The parties agreed that the customer would apply for the environmental permit because the builder had no prior experience of getting this type of authorization. The builder accepted customer's request to order materials before getting the permit, so long as they paid in advance. The customer paid for the materials, even though they didn't get the permit. What could go wrong for the builder? Well, let's say that they committed to get the environmental permit and to complete the construction in 12 months. The problem is that the time to complete the building started from contract signature and not from issuance of the permit. The builder made several applications for the permit. When the first applications were rejected, they decided to buy materials, at their risk, to try and avoid additional delays. Unfortunately for the builder, when the permit was rejected, they could not recover the cost of materials from the customer. And the customer also files a claim against them for a breach of contract and negligence. Let's look at a sample clause and some key considerations. This example is closely connected to our video on the contract date, conditions precedent, and the effective date. Check it out to deepen your understanding. Let's start with a definition. Effective date means the date when the parties have in place all permits, approvals, and consents. This definition is often used to determine when the main performance obligations of a contract will start. In this definition, it's necessary for the parties to get all authorizations that fall within the definition of permits, approvals, and consents to achieve the effective date. This mechanism is especially helpful when the authorization goes to the root of the whole deal. In other words, when you can't perform a large part of the contract without the authorization. Now we need to define what authorizations are needed, who's to get them, and by when. So our sample clause continues. Customer will procure permits, approvals, and consents for. Then you insert a description of what's needed, not later than whatever deadline you choose. You can repeat the same formulation of words if the supplier needs to obtain authorizations. You just replace reference to the customer with reference to the supplier. Let me recap the most important points from this video. First, it's good practice to know what permits, approvals, and consents are needed to implement your deal. Make clear in the contract who's responsible for getting each authorization. Second, consider linking the effective date of your contract to when all critical authorizations are in place. And finally, understand the full cost, effort, and time needed to get an authorization before you accept responsibility. Authorizations aren't just paperwork. They can involve surveys, consultants, application fees, and waiting periods. If you're ready to speak with an expert or to hire a lawyer, then check out starlitcontracts.com, where we will help you to retain a lawyer or law firm to address your requirements.